The film is set in Germany in 1944 and bases on a 16-year-old biracial young lady named Lena who is being pursued somewhere near the Gestapo due to her being half dark. They show up at her home and question her mom about her whereabouts. She then, at that point, says that she's away in Lübeck with her auntie before rapidly checking out the floor. The Gestapo at last leaves and Lena's mom uncovers confidential compartment that Lena had been stowing away in. After that they board a train for Berlin, which doesn't have similar severe standards about individuals like Lena. She then describes about how she's one of the Rhineland rats who have German moms and dark dads. However, they have more opportunity than Jews. Because of their German moms they are as yet being oppressed. In light of them being dark, Lana's sibling Cone starts to become exhausted, and afterward says that he can't attract his craftsmanship book without a pencil. A warrior approaches them and grins as he gives the kid a pencil. The officer then sees Lena and quickly requests her papers which her mom shows. He questions her last name before brutally giving back her papers. She in the end goes to class and is presented by the instructor to the class. The instructor then, at that point, starts to single out her appearance, calling it Ungerman. Lena safeguards herself, saying that her mother was German and that is where she got her German last name. The instructor asks her what her dad's name is. Nevertheless, she was unable to reply. That evening Lena gets some information about her dad. Her mom tells her that Lena definitely has a deep understanding of her father. Cone then, at that point, lets them know how he was reproved prior in class for protecting her. The following day Lena passes by walking Jews returning. A young fellow then, at that point, tells her she ought to walk alongside them prior to pushing her into the group. One more young fellow on the opposite side of the road watches Lena alongside her mother and sibling visit her auntie as her uncle had as of late gotten back from Vienna. Her auntie then converses with her mom that she didn't anticipate that the two youngsters should show up in visiting and is watchful if anybody saw Lena enter. Her uncle shows up and Lena's mom then, at that point, sends them home ahead as they leave. Her auntie advises her to leave by the back. Lana's mom then, at that point, asks her uncle for bogus papers that would confirm that Lena is cleaned. She then says that assuming he does this for her then she won't annoy the two of them once more. They go to a store to purchase the bread and the agent Gunther messes around with Cone. Individuals begin to arrange behind the two kin and an elderly person tells Gunther to pick up the pace. Gunther then makes Lana grin. Previously they leave. Cone joins the Hitler Youth, which is required before he leaves. Their mom advises him that he may gain things that are not quite the same as what she showed him and that he ought to know to sort out without anyone else which is good and bad. Elena looks as he joins the other young men. Furthermore, they walk away the following morning. Lena is headed to where her mom works when a kid wearing a Hitler Youth uniform hits her with his bicycle. Lena tumbles to the ground, harming her face while her mom advises him to be more cautious. The kid Lutz gets her things and hands them back to her before she and her mom leave. Lutz's dad watches what is going on from a close-by building. Lutz shows up in his office and his dad inquires as to why he was there so early. He says that the pioneers will have a gathering before the more youthful individuals show up. He then, at that point, goes after a cigarette, yet his father advises him to quit, saying that he ought to ask prior to taking it, and tosses a cigarette at him. Lena and her mom then, at that point, get Cone from a concerned neighbor. Upon seeing the injuries all over, the neighbor then, at that point, gives her mom a letter saying it was dropped off by a man while they were out. She perceives that it came from Lana's uncle. Both of them meet and he gives her a papers to sign in some directions. He then lets Lana's mom know that she ought to let him and his significant other be presently. Later on, Lutz and his dad clean shoes together. Lutz says he got along nicely. That day, however, he gets no applause from his dad, who rather says that they'll go out on a fishing trip. In the interim, Lena's mom gives her the papers from her uncle and tells her to sign them. She declines and her mom then tells her that on the off chance that she doesn't, then she will be taken and sanitized. Her mom likewise lets Lena know that she wouldn't need this for her, as she needs Lena to encounter being a mother. The following day Lena is pulled out of school. She runs home and her mom is grateful that she wasn't do any harm. As a result of this, Lena begins work administration. She and her mom are on their way home when she sees Lutz once more. They visually engage before Lutz's father inquires as to whether he was getting in the vehicle with him. Lutz then says that he would simply ride his bike home. He winds up following Lena and inquires as to whether she was okay. She says that she's fine and leaves. One day, Lena sees Gunther being ridiculed by German troopers. She stows away and looks as they drive him to remove his jeans. The warriors then, at that point, figure out that he is circumcised, which implies that he's a Jew. They shoot him in the confidential part. Prior to shooting his head that evening, Lena, what's more, her family unobtrusively have supper until Cohn feels appalled at how Gunther was a Jew, but they purchased food from him. Lena then lets him know that he was a decent Jew, while their mom says that it didn't make any difference whether he was a Jew or not, on the grounds that he was human. Lutz starts to show interest that he needs to battle on the cutting edges of the war. His dad doesn't need him to telling him of his experience of the past war. Lena looks as individuals from the Hitler Youth accumulate outside their home for a march. Her mom is fixing a radio which is broadcasting a discourse from the other side of the conflict. She heads outside and attempts to join the march, however different kids check out her appalled. She then takes off and follows them from a far distance as they line up close to a timberland. Lutz finds her taking cover behind the trees. Also, tells her that she could get in inconvenience for what she's doing. She lets him know that she was interested about how Cohn was doing their gathering. He then tells her that he has seen a lady like her on a front of a jazz collection that his granddad claimed. He then, at that point, takes her to a lake where he outrages her by getting some information about her mom. Furthermore, father. She then, at that point, says that she generally needed to swim in the lake around evening time, however she had a terrible involvement with her old neighborhood. Lutz then bounces into the lake and the two of them play around the water. They nearly get found out as warriors pass by, yet Lena stows away submerged. Both of them begin to develop nearer. During one of their gatherings, Lutz inquires in the event that Lena's dad, who was a warrior, battled for Germany. She answers yes, despite the fact that she's not sure, and is irate that evening when her mother tells her that her dad was a individual from the French armed force and an adversary of Germany. Her mom converses with her in French, however. She gets angrier. Her mom then, at that point, cautions her that assuming Lutz's dad finds out about them, then he will kill Lutz. After work, Lena lets her mom know that she passed on her gloves prior to leaving to get together with Lutz. They begin to kiss prior to seeing warrior jets pass by. He then gives her some cheddar before she gets back to her mom. During objective practice, Lutz hears Cohn affront Lena. Lutz then pulls the kid away. What's more, takes care of him soil as discipline. He brings Cohn back home later as Lena shows up. She pursues her sibling and inquires as to whether he actually adores her, however she says he detests her since she's a young lady. The Gestapo show up at their home that night and request Lena's papers. He begins to really take a look at them prior to consuming them. In the interim, Lutz is as yet attempting to persuade his dad to allow him to battle, however his dad actually will not permit him to. Lena sees warriors impeding the road, keeping her from returning home. Lutz sees her and takes her to his home, while his dad's away so she can be protected. He shows her the jazz collection he talked about prior and plays it on the ultrasound image. Both of them dance and in the end have intercourse. Lutz brings her back home that evening. What's more, he gets found out by fighters observing the roads as a result of the time limit. Lana figures out how to stow away and he gives her his ring before she enters the structure. En route to work, Lena's mom catches a warrior and another advises them to quit strolling. He requests their papers, however Lena doesn't have any to show. Her mom is removed. Lena attempts to meet with Lutz, however one man tells him that he had left as of now. She then, at that point, passes on Cohn to live with their auntie. She goes to work and sees that some troopers are really looking at everybody's papers. One trooper begins strolling toward her, yet she diverts him by bringing up a lady that attempts to escape. She takes off yet is gotten by another trooper and shipped off one of the work camps. She gets relegated to work in the kitchen. While in line one day, the young lady alongside her nearly blacks out. She peers down and sees that her shoes are broken and her feet are dying. The young lady nearly tumbles down, however Lena gets her. After that, they return to their bunk and Lana tracks down that somebody else is resting on her bed. She starts to affront them, considering them a Jew, while the other individual abuses her for being dark. The young lady she met before persuades Lena to bunk with her, all things considered. Sometime thereafter, the young lady Hermine tells her that Lana's stomach is round, significance that she's pregnant. She then inquires as to whether Lena realizes what occurs in the Jewish rodent house, yet she doesn't reply. The following morning, Lena plunks down outside, where she can see the spot she calls the rodent house. She sees that debris is falling and a couple of specks land on her hand. She then checks the opposite side out. Second time elapses and Lutz is seen on board a tactical vehicle. In the meantime, faculty in the work camp sees the family ring Lutz provided for Lena and hands it to a trooper. Back in the camp, Lena gives a portion of her food to Hermine and tells her that she'll give her a potato that she would be able use to exchange for better shoes. Before they rest that evening, she tells Her mind that she told the specialists that she is cleaned. Her brain then, at that point, helps her tight spot her stomach. To conceal her pregnancy, Lena in the long run takes a potato from the kitchen to give to her bunkmate. She gets her found out by a watchman to remove her garments. Then, at that point, Lutz shows up and is stunned to see her in the camp. He then volunteers to look through her shelter. Furthermore, the gatekeeper leaves Lana's bunkmate shows up and Lutz strolls them to their fortification. After that, Lutz goes to his father's office. His dad sees that he's pale and inquires as to whether he's wiped out. Lutz then asks his dad for what reason he was sent on the camp. His dad then, at that point, makes sense of it was to keep him protected and away from the bleeding edges, while as yet serving the country. In the detainees' shelter, Lena lets her mind take a chomp of the potato previously protecting it for her. She then removes her psyche's shoes and wraps her foot. The following morning, Lena cleans the windows of the workplace of Lutz's dad. She sees the ring on his finger prior to returning to work. Later, Lena is approached to go with Lutz and they track down a protected spot to talk. Lutz asks her how could she get into the camp and where her mom was. Nevertheless, she doesn't reply. She shows her dissatisfaction that he out of nowhere left without telling her. We should answers that he was called and that he had no way out and no opportunity to tell her about it. He then advises her to meet with him this evening so he can give her food. In the interim, another official beginnings to question the dependability of Lutz's dad, since he hasn't marked a request to clear the kids in the camp and due to his association with a merchant. Lena escapes one evening and Lutz gives her a fabric and some food. Both of them embrace and Lutz gives her his jacket to warm her up. Lutz then figures out that she's pregnant. In the meantime, a trooper returns Lana's ring to Lutz's dad. The following morning, Lutz strolls with his dad and they plunk down with Lena in view. His dad offers him a stogie, however he denies, looking apprehensive. That evening, his dad signs a report approving the move of the ladies to one more camp. One of the camp's staff then enters Lana's shelter and wakes the individuals inside up. Her brain then, at that point, Lutz pounds